morning guys, or good evening I should say, sorry. I just thought I'd start this video with a rather cute little stranger that's just turned up for a sort of evening sustenance. Although she's very sort of amply filled out, so I don't think she needs food. I rather suspect her cat guardians might be key workers, so because she always comes with this sort of, she's a sort of night visitor more so. I mean, at the weekend she comes out in the day sometimes, but she is, she's a lovely nature. I think she's a she. We've been trying to work this out for like 12 months because she's got that much fur, but we think she's had kittens at some point. And she is a lovely nature. She's universally referred to as fat cat or random cat. I mean, I don't like calling her fat cat in case like she gets offended, and she's nice really. Well, until you try and lift her off a table when she sort of tried to jump on it, but yeah. So I've managed to do a fair amount of reading this week. I think there's a record of about 4 books. In a 1 week period, excuse me. So I'm breaking all known records even for my abilities of consuming material. But I'm enjoying the chance to get through my TBR pile. And the first books I read and the ones I'm going to concentrate on today are Columbine by Dave Cullen and A Mother's Reckoning by Sue Klebold. Now, Columbine, the first book I mentioned by Dave Cullen, he was a journalist who worked near the town of Littleton in Colorado in the USA, where the Columbine school shootings took place in 1999. And his work, he was one of the first reporters on the scene, and he has maintained an interest in the subject of violence in school and school shootings and things in the 20 years since it's happened. I found this book very informative actually, because I am the same age as the people, or a very similar age to the people who perpetrated and were greatly affected by the actions of Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, who were the perpetrators of the Columbine school shootings. And as somebody from the UK, gun violence is sort of a very unknown quantity really. We have very few, well, comparatively few guns and things in and it's not a great centre to our cultural life unless you live in the country and you do clay pigeon shooting, or you shoot pheasants or something like near where my dad lives. In particular times of the year on the moors, they will shoot pheasant and various things, but there's no like large animal hunting that I can think of. So guns are not a big feature of our cultural life. But having spent quite some time in the US on and off, one of the first things I was aware of was the presence of guns, because when we flew into JFK Airport when I was a child, the police officer had or the police officers around the airport had guns, they were armed, and that's not something you see routinely in the UK. You see them more frequently now post any kind of terrorism, like if you're going through a railway station, but the average police officer isn't routinely armed. So I'm always sort of fascinated by reading about different cultures, and I'm because I'm not a sort of pro-gun kind of a person, but I am so totally perplexed as to how people can fall down this rabbit hole of gratuitous violence and think it's going to solve some. I don't know how teenage children wake up one morning and think that massacring people and killing themselves is the great escape and the legacy in life they want to leave. But Dave Cullen's book is very measured, I think. It's a very measured book. It's sort of quite chronological, and it talks about the lead up to the shootings themselves. It gives a sort of idea of the killers and their home lives, and then talks about the victims in the aftermath. It's a very engaging format to read the whole way through, and particularly if you're coming from a different sort of culture, it was very useful because there's a lot of subtleties of like the US law and things, and the way juvenile offenders are treated and things that I didn't understand, or I didn't have the background to understand in that way, that in the same way that I would if it was in the UK. So I found that very useful, and I think it's one of the better books I've read about the incident at Columbine. But